let's talk instrument care and maintenance. As far as the violin is concerned, it's important to clean it each day after you play. I like to use a soft cloth or a soft Viva paper towel. You always want to use something that's soft and dry. My favorite type of cloth is an old t-shirt. So if you have an old t-shirt that's made with a soft cotton, you can just gently wipe off your instrument, wipe off the strings, wipe off the top, gently after you play each time. You can get an instrument polished, but I would not suggest polishing it every day or every week. You want to polish it on days that you have a concert or a special event, or if you notice that you have a big buildup of rosin or dust on your instrument. The next thing you want to do with your instrument is you want to tune it every day. I'm going to show you how to do that in an upcoming video. You also want to make sure that your violin doesn't get too hot or too cold. I like to think about it like the violin was a baby. You don't want to leave your violin in a car that's so cold or so hot that you wouldn't leave a baby in it. If the violin gets really hot, the glue is both water and heat soluble. What that means is if you leave your violin in the trunk and it's 100 degrees out and your trunk is 120, your violin very likely will either come unglued or the top varnish will begin to bubble. The other thing you want to avoid doing is bumping your violin, especially the bridge, which is not glued down. You want to also avoid setting your violin this direction with pressure on the bridge. So that means if you have a violin case, you want to set it down on its feet and never on the top. So this is a violin package. You'll notice the bottom has some backpack straps, and sometimes there are feet on the bottom, but then the top usually has a pocket. You'll know it's the top because if you open it, the violin will be facing upwards. You always want your violin facing upwards like this, and when you put it away, you always want to secure it with the Velcro strap. And then you set your bow in the case. The bow goes in the case, stick side up, tip inward, and you have to be very careful around the spinny part of the bow latch because you can catch the hairs pretty easily. So be very careful there to secure your bow in but not clip any hairs. And then when you're done playing, you're going to want to make sure you always zip the violin up. You're going to think that you'll never forget, or even if you did forget, that the latch is going to hold. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone pick up their instrument and have their violin fall out on the floor, even though I always tell students this on the very first lesson. So keep your violin flat, always zip it all the way up. And another quick tip, if your violin case has a latch or a lock on it, I strongly encourage you not to lock it, because if you lose the key, you'll have to destroy the case or find someone with the same key to get into your case. Most people aren't going to steal your violin, and if they are, they're going to steal the whole thing, including the case. So it really doesn't matter if you lock it at that point. Always store your violin flat, never upright, because if you store it upright and it happens to fall, it can fall and put pressure on the bridge. We don't want that. If we bump or put pressure on the bridge, it could move very easily, either getting crooked or left and right. Now, if your bridge moves to the left or right, it's going to make your strings off of center. So if you look at your strings and they aren't centered up on the fingerboard, you probably need to get your bridge straightened out. Just like you're going to clean your violin each day when you're done playing, you also need to do some maintenance on your bow. When we put the bow into the case, we lefty-loosey loosen the bow just until a few hairs come away from the pack. We want just a couple of loose hairs. And then when you're ready to play, you're going to tighten the bow until the hairs come together. It's not very tight. Be careful. A lot of beginning students will accidentally tighten their bow way too tight, because if they're not studying the proper techniques and they're just trying to grab onto their violin and go, when you tighten your bow really tight, it makes it less likely to scratch and squeak. But if you're doing the correct techniques, you want to have your bow pretty loose in the middle, about the distance of a centimeter or a sharpened number 2 pencil right in the middle. You just kind of want to be able to see through it a little bit. If your bow is too tight, you're not going to be able to apply enough pressure to sound great. So just tighten it until all of the hairs come together. Okay, once your bow is tightened, we're going to grab some rosin. And you want to open up your rosin, have the rosin side up. You'll learn the bow hold in a later video. We're going to set the bow onto the rosin and bow back and forth. Can you hear the sound? I like to bow back and forth, up and down 10 times. So 20 times total. 10 times down and 10 times up. And what you'll notice is if you bow up and down and you're pressing firmly enough and pulling fast enough to hear the rosin sound, then pretty soon you're going to get a poof of rosin off of your bow. You want to be able to get a small poof of rosin. If you get a huge poof of rosin, you probably rosin too much. That's okay. Clean your strings on your violin, play for a little while, and then clean them again. If the next day you still get a poof of rosin, you can skip rosining that day. But for most people, they can rosin that amount each and every day if they're practicing their violin.